The interstellar port of New Jakarta hummed with the constant rhythm of galactic commerce. Massive holographic displays flickered with shipping manifests, trade routes, and diplomatic communications, creating a kaleidoscope of light that reflected off the polished titanium surfaces. Aria Martinez sat hunched over her workstation, her fingers moving with practiced precision across the quantum interface. Most researchers would have called it a routine archival project. The Galactic Historical Database required constant maintenance, cross-referencing millions of communication logs from thousands of species across hundreds of star systems. It was thankless work, the kind of task typically assigned to junior researchers or automated scanning systems. But Aria was different. Where others saw monotonous data entry, she saw a puzzle waiting to be solved. Her dark eyes narrowed as her hand paused over a particular data fragment. Something was off. Most researchers would have dismissed the anomaly. A misplaced timestamp, an inconsistent diplomatic communication log that seemed to contradict established historical records. But Aria's mind didn't work like most. She zoomed in on the fragment, her neural link interface allowing her to manipulate the holographic data with mere thoughts. The communication log was from a diplomatic exchange between the Nexarian Crystalline Confederation and the Theron Collective, dated approximately 287 years ago. On the surface, it appeared to be a standard negotiation record, the kind of bureaucratic documentation that typically put most readers to sleep. But Aria noticed the subtle inconsistencies. A comma in the wrong place, a timestamp that didn't quite align with the referenced events. The kind of minute details that most alien species, with their rigid, logic-driven approaches to information, would never catch. Humans, with their unique ability to see patterns and appreciate nuance, were different. She initiated a deep scan cross-reference, her custom-built analysis algorithm probing the database's vast archives. The system hummed, quantum processors working overtime as they compared the document against millions of other records. Most databases would take hours, if not days, to complete such an extensive search. Aria's custom human design system did it in minutes. The results were unexpected. 3 additional communication logs showed similar anomalies. They were subtle, so subtle that they would have been invisible to most species. The Nexarians, with their crystalline computational systems, valued pure data over interpretation. The Theron Collective's biomechanical archives prioritized efficiency over nuance. But humans? They saw stories within the data. Aria leaned back, her mind racing. These weren't just simple errors. They were breadcrumbs, hints of something larger, something hidden beneath the surface of accepted galactic history. Outside her workstation's window, ships of 100 different designs moved through the port. Sleek Nexarian vessels with their geometric crystal hulls, organic, pulsing Theron ships that seemed to breathe with mechanical life. Commercial transports, military vessels, each told a story of the ongoing conflict that had defined galactic politics for generations. But Aria was beginning to suspect that the real story was something entirely different. She remembered her grandmother's words, a veteran diplomat who had always told her that history is written by those with the most to gain. Look beyond the words, she would say. Look at the spaces between them. Now, those words echoed in Aria's mind as she stared at the anomalous data fragment. This was more than just an interesting discovery. This was the beginning of something significant. She could feel it in her bones, that uniquely human intuition that no computational system could replicate. Something was wrong with the accepted narrative of the galactic conflict, and she was going to find out what it was. Aria began to compile her initial findings, her fingers moving with a mixture of excitement and methodical precision. She would need more evidence, more context, but this was a start. The first thread of a mystery that could unravel everything. The war room of the Galactic Historical Research Center was a cathedral of conflict, its walls lined with holographic displays that chronicled centuries of destruction. Massive 3-dimensional projections showed star systems reduced to cosmic dust, planetary shields crackling with the last vestiges of resistance, and fleet movements that painted intricate patterns of devastation across the galactic map. Aria Martinez stood before these displays, her initial research notes clutched tightly in her hand. The room was silent except for the soft hum of quantum processors and the occasional pulse of data streams. Around her, researchers from a dozen different species studied the endless conflict between the Nexarians and the Theran collective. To most, the war was a simple narrative. The crystalline Nexarians, with their mathematically perfect society, versus the biomechanical Theran collective, a civilization of living machines constantly seeking expansion. Generations had been born, lived, and died knowing only this conflict. Entire economies functioned around the perpetual state of war. But Aria saw something different. She zoomed in on a particular sector of the galactic map, her fingers tracing the patterns of conflict. The battle lines were too perfect. The economic impacts too consistent. Something felt manufactured about the entire situation. Her research terminal blinked with additional cross-reference data. She had spent the entire previous night running deep analysis algorithms, comparing diplomatic communications, economic reports, and military dispatches. Most researchers would have been exhausted. Aria felt more alive than ever. A holographic projection materialized beside her. Dr. Xalek, a senior Nexarian researcher, approached with measured steps. His crystalline body refracted light in precise geometric patterns, a living representation of his species' mathematical perfection. "Your preliminary report is causing quite a stir," he said, his voice a harmonious blend of electronic tones and crystalline resonance. Aria turned, meeting his multifaceted gaze. "I'm simply following the data." Dr. Xalek's crystalline form shifted slightly, the Nexarian equivalent of a raised eyebrow. "The data tells a story of necessary conflict. The Theran collective threatens our existence. This war maintains the balance." But Aria had already seen something Dr. Xalek hadn't. The economic reports showed a level of resource allocation that defied traditional warfare logic. Weapon systems were being produced at rates that suggested continuous conflict was more profitable than resolution. "Have you ever wondered why the war never truly ends?" she asked. The crystal researcher's form flickered. Surprise, confusion, perhaps a hint of defensive response. "Conflict is the nature of advanced civilizations. Resources are limited. Expansion is necessary." Aria pulled up a series of economic graphs. Production rates, resource allocation, weapon system contracts. To the untrained eye, they looked like standard wartime economics. But to her, they told a different story. The weapons contracts were too consistent. The resource extraction too perfectly balanced. It was as if someone was carefully managing the conflict, ensuring it never reached a true resolution, but never burned out completely. Outside the research center's massive windows, a Theran battle fleet moved into formation. Organic mechanical ships that looked more like living creatures than machines, their hull surfaces pulsing with bioelectronic energy. They were preparing for another conflict, another battle in a war that had lasted generations. But Aria was beginning to see the war for what it truly was. Not a clash of civilizations, but a carefully managed economic engine. Her communication device chirped. A message from her team. More anomalies discovered. More threads to pull. Dr. Xalek watched her, his crystalline form reflecting the holographic displays of endless conflict. "What do you hope to achieve?" he asked. Aria's smile was soft but determined. "The truth," she responded. "Sometimes that's the most dangerous weapon of all." The war room continued its silent vigil, holographic displays continuing to show the endless dance of destruction. But something had changed. A small crack had appeared in the accepted narrative. And Aria Martinez was about to make that crack much, much larger. The converted cargo ship Horizon drifted quietly in the neutral zone between Nexarian and Theran territories. Its exterior looked unremarkable, deliberately so. Scorch marks, outdated communication arrays, and a hull that had clearly seen better days. To any passing scanner, It appeared to be just another forgotten vessel trying to survive on the edges of an endless conflict. Inside was anything but ordinary. Aria Martinez stood in the ship's primary research chamber, surrounded by her carefully selected team. Each member represented a unique human approach to problem-solving that no other species could replicate. Marcus Rodriguez, a former military strategist, leaned against a holographic display. His eyes moved constantly, analyzing potential patterns and connections that most would overlook. Where traditional military analysts saw isolated incidents, Marcus saw intricate networks of potential influence. Dr. Elena Chen, the quantum data analyst, sat surrounded by a cloud of floating holographic interfaces. Her fingers danced through streams of data, manipulating information with an intuition that defied traditional computational logic. Algorithms were more than just mathematical instructions to her. They were living, breathing systems waiting to reveal their secrets. Jack Harper, their diplomatic communications expert, reviewed centuries of intercepted transmissions. His background in linguistics and cultural anthropology gave him a unique ability to read between the lines of official communications. Where others saw only words, Jack saw motivations, hidden agendas, and the subtle dance of political manipulation. "We're missing something," Aria said, her voice cutting through the chamber's quiet concentration. Marcus looked up, a holographic map of galactic conflict zones flickering behind him. "The war doesn't make economic sense. Look at the resource allocation." Dr. Chen's interfaces shifted, showing complex economic charts. "Production rates are too consistent, too perfect. It's like the conflict is being managed rather than fought." Jack leaned forward, pulling up a series of diplomatic communications. Listen to the language. The negotiation patterns. They're following an almost mathematical progression. No real passion. No genuine conflict. Aria watched her team work, proud of their uniquely human approach. Where alien research teams would approach the problem with rigid computational methods, they brought creativity, intuition, and an ability to see connections that defied traditional logic. A Horizons quantum computer, a custom-built system that pushed the boundaries of traditional computational thinking, began processing their collected data. Most species relied on pure mathematical models. This system was different. It had been designed to mirror human cognitive patterns, to look for the stories hidden within the data. "We need more," Aria muttered. Marcus nodded. "The Galactic Council won't accept our findings without overwhelming evidence. We're suggesting that a 1,000-year war is essentially a massive economic fabrication." Dr. Chen's interfaces suddenly pulsed with activity. "I'm finding consistent economic patterns. Look at the weapon production contracts. They're synchronized across multiple sectors in a way that shouldn't be possible by chance." Jack pulled up a diplomatic communication, his fingers highlighting subtle linguistic patterns. "The negotiation language hasn't substantially changed in 3 centuries. It's like they're reading from a script." The team worked in harmony, each bringing their unique human perspective to the investigation. No alien research team could match their approach. The ability to combine intuition, creativity, and analytical thinking in such a fluid manner. Outside the Horizon's reinforced windows, a Theran patrol ship drifted past. Its biomechanical hull pulsed with organic energy, a living weapon in an apparently endless conflict. Aria watched the ship, her mind racing with possibilities. "We're close," she said quietly. "We're going to expose the truth behind this war." The team continued their work, unaware that their investigation was about to uncover something far bigger than they could imagine. The Horizon drifted silently, a beacon of human curiosity and determination in the vast, conflict-filled darkness of space. The algorithm took shape like a living organism, lines of code weaving together in patterns that defied traditional computational logic. Dr. Elena Chen stood back, her eyes reflecting the complex holographic interfaces that surrounded her workspace. This wasn't just another analysis system. This was something entirely different. Most species approached data analysis as a linear process. Input, calculation, output. Predictable. Mechanical. Sterile. Humans saw data as a story waiting to be understood. The quantum computational core of their custom system pulsed with an almost organic rhythm. Each line of code was more than an instruction. It was a potential pathway of discovery. Where traditional alien algorithms would follow strict mathematical models, this system was designed to mimic human cognitive flexibility. "We're not just processing information," Elena muttered to herself. "We're interpreting it." The system began to layer multiple levels of analysis simultaneously: economic transactions, diplomatic communications, military dispatches, historical records. Instead of treating each data stream as a separate entity, the algorithm looked for connections, for the subtle threads that might bind them together. Arya watched from across the research chamber, her excitement growing with each passing moment. The holographic displays began to shift, revealing patterns that no previous analysis had ever detected. Marcus Rodriguez approached, his military strategist's mind already processing the implications. "This is more than just an algorithm," he said. "It's a way of seeing." The system started to visualize the data differently. Traditional alien computational methods would have produced sterile graphs and mathematical projections. This visualization was alive, pulsing, changing. Each connection between data points told a story of hidden motivations and carefully managed conflict. Economic transactions that seemed random suddenly revealed intricate patterns. Weapon production contracts that appeared unrelated began to form a complex network. Diplomatic communications showed subtle manipulation that had gone unnoticed for centuries. "Look at this," Elena said, zooming into a particularly complex section of the visualization. The economic flow between the Nexarian Confederation and the Theran Collective was not a random exchange of resources. It was a carefully managed system. Weapon production increased precisely when conflict seemed to be waning. Resource extraction followed mathematical patterns that suggested external management. Jack Harper, the communications expert, began overlaying linguistic analysis. The negotiation transcripts weren't just communications, they were carefully constructed narratives. Each word, each phrase seemed designed to maintain a specific level of tension. "It's like a script," Jack said, his fingers tracing the linguistic patterns. "They're not having real negotiations. They're performing." The algorithm continued to evolve, learning and adapting with each new piece of information. This was the true power of human design technology, the ability to grow, to understand, to see beyond the immediate data. Arya watched the visualization expand, her mind racing with the implications. This was more than just an investigation into a war. This was an exposure of a system so complex, so carefully managed, that it had defined galactic politics for generations. The quantum computational core pulsed faster. Connections became clearer. The invisible threads that held the conflict together began to reveal themselves. "We're going to need more than just data," Marcus said quietly. "We're going to need proof that can stand up to the most intense scrutiny." The research chamber fell silent. The holographic displays continued their dance of information, revealing a truth that had remained hidden for centuries. A truth that would challenge everything the galaxy understood about conflict, economics, and the nature of political manipulation. Arya Martinez looked at her team. Humans, a species most galactic civilizations had dismissed as young, inexperienced, too emotional. They were about to prove how wrong everyone had been. The Galactic Council chamber was a marvel of architectural engineering. Suspended high above the metropolitan landscape of Celestial Prime, the circular hall seemed to float among the clouds. Crystal spires and anti-gravity supports created an illusion of weightlessness, a physical representation of the supposed neutrality of galactic governance. Arya Martinez stood at the center of this imposing space, her presentation interface humming with carefully compiled evidence. Around her, representatives from hundreds of alien species watched with a mixture of curiosity and barely concealed contempt. The Nexarian delegation sat to her left, their crystalline bodies reflecting the chamber's soft lighting. The Theran Collective's biomechanical ambassadors occupied the right side, their living interfaces pulsing with electromagnetic energy. Between them sat dozens of other species, each with their own complex political motivations. "Your evidence is nothing more than speculation," declared Ambassador Krell, the senior Nexarian representative. His crystalline form shifted with what could only be described as diplomatic irritation. Aria remained calm. Humans had a unique ability to maintain composure under pressure, a trait that both fascinated and unsettled other galactic species. "These are not speculations," she responded, her voice steady. "These are documented patterns of economic and diplomatic manipulation." Her presentation interface began to display the complex algorithm they had developed. Holographic projections showed intricate networks of economic transactions, diplomatic communications, and military resource allocations. Where other species saw complexity, Aria and her team had found a pattern of careful, systematic manipulation. The Theran ambassador, a being of living metal and organic circuitry, leaned forward. "Your interpretation challenges centuries of established galactic understanding," it stated, its voice a blend of electronic tones and biological resonance. Jack Harper, standing just behind Aria, activated a secondary interface. Linguistic analysis began to overlay the economic data. Communication patterns that seemed random now revealed themselves as carefully constructed narratives. The chamber grew tense. Most species relied on rigid computational analysis. Humans brought something different, an ability to see stories within data, to understand motivation beyond simple mathematical models. "The war between your civilizations is not organic," Aria explained. "It's a carefully managed economic system. Someone, or something, is profiting from this continuous conflict." Ambassador Krell's crystalline form vibrated with what could only be described as diplomatic rage. "Preposterous," he declared. "We have historical records, military justifications, centuries of conflict." Aria smiled. Humans had a particular talent for challenging established narratives. Her team had anticipated this resistance. Marcus Rodriguez stepped forward, his military background evident in his precise movements. He began to break down the economic models, showing how weapon production, resource extraction, and diplomatic tensions were synchronized with mathematical precision. The chamber fell silent. Dr. Elena Chen activated the final layer of their presentation. The quantum computational analysis began to unravel decades of carefully constructed narrative. Economic flows that seemed random now revealed themselves as a carefully managed system. "This goes beyond your current conflict," Aria said. "This is about something much larger." The Galactic Council representatives began to shift uncomfortably. Humans had a way of asking questions that other species preferred to avoid, of seeing patterns that others chose to ignore. Outside the chamber's massive windows, the city of Celestial Prime stretched out, a testament to galactic cooperation and technological achievement. But Aria and her team had discovered something fundamental. The cooperation was an illusion. The conflict was a carefully managed system, and they were about to expose everything. The presentation continued, each revelation more shocking than the last. The carefully constructed narrative of generations began to crumble. Aria Martinez stood at the center of it all. A human, a species most galactic civilizations had dismissed as young, inexperienced, emotional. They were about to learn how wrong they had been. The first cracks appeared in the most unexpected places. Financial markets across multiple star systems began to shift. Trading networks that had remained stable for generations suddenly showed signs of unprecedented volatility. Communication channels that had maintained a carefully constructed narrative started to break down. Aria Martinez watched from the horizon, her team's research vessel now functioning as a nerve center of galactic revelation. Each data stream told a story of growing instability. The system they had exposed was more fragile than anyone could have imagined. Marcus Rodriguez tracked the economic ripples. "They built a perfect machine," he said, his voice a mixture of admiration and disbelief. "But perfect machines have perfect breaking points. The quantum computational system continued to analyze the spreading impact. Where traditional analysis would have seen chaos, their human-designed algorithm saw a pattern. Every economic fluctuation, every diplomatic communication, every military movement told a piece of a larger story. Dr. Elena Chen monitored the data streams, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. "The entire system is interconnected," she muttered. "Remove one support, and the entire structure begins to collapse." Jack Harper began intercepting diplomatic communications. The carefully constructed language that had maintained the conflict for generations now sounded different. Hints of uncertainty, moments of genuine confusion. The script they had been following was beginning to unravel. On Celestial Prime, the Galactic Council descended into unprecedented levels of internal conflict. Their presentation had done more than challenge a narrative. It had exposed a fundamental lie that had defined galactic politics for generations. The Nexarian Crystalline Confederation was the first to show significant internal fractures. Their mathematically perfect society began to question the economic models that had sustained their civilization. Entire planetary economic systems started to reassess their foundational assumptions. The Theron Collective's biomechanical networks detected the growing instability. Communication patterns changed. Military deployments became erratic. The carefully managed conflict was losing its carefully constructed management. "We're watching a system collapse in real time," Aria said, her eyes fixed on the data streams. Each revelation built upon the last. Financial tracking systems that had operated with mathematical precision for centuries began to show inconsistencies. Diplomatic communication networks that had maintained a delicate balance of tension now revealed their manufactured nature. The human team had done more than present evidence. They had provided a new way of seeing. Marcus pulled up a comprehensive map of galactic economic flows. "Look at how the weapon production contracts are synchronized," he explained. "It's not just about profit. It's about maintaining the specific level of tension." Dr. Chen's interfaces showed the linguistic patterns. "The negotiation transcripts," she said, "they're not real negotiations. They're performance pieces designed to maintain a specific narrative." Jack Harper continued to intercept and analyze communications. They'd been reading from the same script for generations, he observed. No real passion. No genuine conflict. Just a carefully managed performance. The horizon drifted in neutral space, a silent witness to the unraveling of a galactic narrative that had defined civilization for centuries. Outside the reinforced windows, the vast darkness of space seemed to hold its breath. Aria understood the magnitude of what they had discovered. This was more than exposing a war. This was challenging the fundamental way galactic civilizations understood conflict, economics, and political interaction. "We're not just revealing a truth," she told her team. "We're showing them an entirely new way of understanding their own history." The data streams continued to flow, each moment bringing new revelations, each communication showing another layer of the carefully constructed illusion. The dominoes were falling, and humanity had been the one to push the first piece. The hidden architects of the conflict revealed themselves in the most unexpected moment of vulnerability. Deep within the quantum communication networks that spanned multiple star systems, a hidden control center began to destabilize. It was a place no diplomatic mission had ever penetrated. A nexus of economic and political manipulation that had managed the galactic conflict for generations. Aria Martinez and her team had tracked the source through an intricate network of quantum communication traces. Where other species would have seen only random data streams, they saw a carefully constructed pattern of control. The control center was located in a region of space known as the Neutral Zone, an area supposedly free from any specific galactic influence. But their research had proven nothing was truly neutral. Everything was connected. Marcus Rodriguez interfaced with the quantum communication systems, his fingers moving with a precision that spoke of years of military training and human intuition. "We're not just breaking through a firewall," he said. "We're exposing an entire system of manipulation." Dr. Elena Chen's computational interfaces began to unravel the complex encryption. Most species would have approached the task with pure mathematical precision. Humans brought something different: an ability to see patterns, to understand motivation, to break through barriers of logic. "It's not just about encryption," Elena muttered. "It's about understanding the story behind the encryption." Jack Harper began analyzing the communication protocols. Linguistic patterns emerged that told a story far more complex than simple data protection. These were communication systems designed to maintain a specific narrative, to manage conflict at a fundamental level. The control center's primary systems began to respond, not with traditional defensive protocols, but with something more nuanced: attempts to negotiate, to redirect, to maintain the carefully constructed narrative that had defined galactic politics for generations. Area watched the interaction with a sense of profound understanding. Humans had a unique ability to see beyond the immediate data, to understand the story behind the systems. "They're trying to maintain control," she explained to her team. "Even now, they're attempting to redirect our investigation." The quantum communication interfaces began to reveal layers of complexity: economic flowcharts, diplomatic communication networks, military resource allocation systems. Each layer told a piece of a larger story of manipulation. Marcus identified the key players: not military leaders or political representatives, but economic entities that had profited from the continuous conflict. Weapon production corporations, resource extraction networks, communication infrastructure providers. "They've been managing this conflict like a business," Marcus observed, "not as a political or military engagement, but as a carefully controlled economic system." Dr. Elena Chen's interfaces began to show the full complexity of the manipulation. Weapon production increased precisely when conflict seemed to be waning. Resource extraction followed mathematical models that suggested external management. Diplomatic communications were carefully constructed performance pieces. Jack Harper's linguistic analysis revealed the most shocking element. The negotiation transcripts weren't real negotiations. They were carefully scripted performances designed to maintain a specific level of tension. The control center began to fight back. Quantum communication networks attempted to redirect their investigation. Encryption systems became more complex. Defensive protocols activated. But humans were uniquely suited to this type of challenge. Area and her team saw the defensive systems not as barriers, but as additional sources of information. Each attempt to block their investigation revealed more about the hidden architects of the conflict. "We're not just exposing a war," Area told her team. "We're revealing a fundamental lie that has defined galactic civilization for generations." The quantum communication interfaces continued to unravel. Layers of complexity gave way to fundamental truths. The carefully managed conflict was nothing more than a sophisticated economic system designed to maintain a specific balance of power. Outside the horizon's reinforced windows, the vast darkness of space seemed to hold its breath, waiting. Humanity was about to change everything. The revelation spread across the galaxy like a quantum wave of understanding. Planetary governments began to reassess decades of conflict. Economic systems that had been built around continuous warfare started to crumble. Diplomatic channels that had maintained carefully constructed tensions suddenly found themselves without a script to follow. Aria Martinez stood before the Galactic Council, her team behind her. The chamber that had once been hostile now buzzed with a mixture of shock, confusion, and emerging hope. "This is more than just exposing a war," she explained. Her voice carried the calm certainty that had become a hallmark of human communication. "This is about understanding how complex systems of manipulation can shape entire civilizations." The Nexarian ambassador, whose crystalline form had once vibrated with diplomatic rage, now seemed almost transparent. Fragments of their carefully constructed narrative were falling away, revealing something more fundamental. The Theron Collective's biomechanical representatives processed the information with a complexity that went beyond simple computation. They were beginning to understand the story behind our own existence. Marcus Rodriguez presented the economic analysis. Weapon production contracts. resource allocation models, communication networks. Each element told a story of carefully managed conflict. Where other species saw data, humans saw narrative. Dr. Elena Chen's quantum computational systems continued to process the implications. The algorithm they had developed was more than just a tool of investigation. It was a new way of understanding complex systems. Jack Harper's linguistic analysis revealed the most profound insight. The negotiations, the communications, the entire framework of galactic conflict had been a performance. A carefully scripted narrative designed to maintain a specific economic and political balance. The Galactic Council chamber transformed. What had once been a place of rigid diplomatic positioning now became a space of genuine dialogue. We're not just revealing a truth, Aria told the assembled representatives. We're showing you a way of seeing that transcends your previous understanding. Planetary representatives from hundreds of species began to communicate in ways they never had before. The carefully maintained barriers began to dissolve. Genuine dialogue replaced scripted performances. The economic systems that had profited from continuous conflict began to collapse. Weapon production corporations found themselves without a purpose. Resource extraction networks lost their carefully managed markets. But something more important emerged. A new understanding of cooperation, of communication, of seeing beyond the immediate narrative. Humans had done more than expose a lie. They had provided a new lens through which entire civilizations could understand themselves. The Horizon research vessel became a symbol of this new approach, a testament to human curiosity, to the ability to see patterns that others missed, to understand stories within data. Aria looked at her team. Marcus with his strategic mind, Elena with her computational creativity, Jack with his linguistic insights. They represented something unique about humanity. The ability to see beyond the obvious, to challenge established narratives, to find truth in the spaces between information. Outside the Galactic Council chamber, the first genuine diplomatic exchanges began to take shape. Not scripted performances, but real conversations, real attempts at understanding. The war that had defined galactic civilization for generations was ending. Not through military might, not through traditional diplomatic channels, but through understanding. Planetary systems that had been locked in conflict for generations began to rebuild. Economic networks reconfigured. Communication channels opened. Humanity had not conquered through force. They had transformed through insight. We're not just revealing a truth, Aria had told the Council. We're showing you an entirely new way of understanding. As the first rays of a new galactic dawn began to spread, one thing became clear. The universe had underestimated humanity. They were not just another young species. They were the ones who could see the stories that others missed.